questions. Righto, boys. Let's get into Phosphate. Centrex deep dive. And Centrex would be like so flattered that they're getting a deep dive on Money of Mine, I reckon.
You know how obsessed I am with industrial minerals, mate. It was going to happen sooner or later. For the Australian domiciled punter, like what are their options to get phosphate mining exposure? And it's pretty slim pickings out there.
The phosphate price has done really well over the past 2 or so years. It got a real uptick, given that a lot of it
comes out of Russia, right? So
Ukraine. So
the crisis there sent those. The prices of phosphate through the roof. I'm very curious, like if you guys know the source of the phosphate that was actually on Nauru, where did that phosphate come from?
Righto, g'day Money Miners, 21st of August, Monday, welcome to the show, and JD is back in town after his gallivantation activities. Is that a word? Is that the addition?
We'll put it in the Matty Michael dictionary, hey?
Yes. How'd you go at Melbourne, JD?
Good. Had a couple interviews, which will trickle out this week. Should we reveal who?
Go right ahead, sunshine.
So we had one with Hedley Witter, who is one of the investment managers at Line Selection Group. So they focus on that early stage, and they're pretty cashed up at the moment. So it's interesting to see where they're going to be allocating capital to in the next sort of period. And he focuses a lot on the period of the cycle we're in at the moment. And another one with John Forward. So he is the CIO at Lowell Resources Fund. And also quite interesting. Also another group that focuses heavily on that early stage exploration. They've got quite a big portfolio as opposed to Lion. So I think they were pretty good chats, and keen to hear what the money miners think.
Geez, they're loving the Azure share price. They were in that pretty early. Well, they were in that when we were talking to Richie Morrow from Lowell about it. So they've done pretty well there.
There's a great nickel pick from them, but it now makes up a really substantial part of their portfolio. So it's interesting to chat through that one, as well as a number of other names that they're holding.
Very good. Trav, how are you, sunshine?
Hey, Matty, I'm well rested. It's been a good weekend.
Did you have a big sleep on the weekend? Big Friday night, mate.
You know me, mate. I like to get a lot of Z's in over the weekend, so I'm ready to give it my all come the week for the Money Miners, mate.
Well, Money Miners, I hope you enjoyed the 5-inch interview with Patrick, the intern. I reckon he done a bloody sensational job. We might have a short coming out of him, a couple of outtakes of him shitting bricks at the start, which is it's good for entertainment. Where is he today? He's done his episode and fucked off. Where's bloody? He's not on the tools.
He'll be back.
He's not getting paid either.
He got what he wanted out of us. Now he's left.
No, that's not fair.
He put in a great shift, and he's got some uni work to get back to.
Oh yeah, forgot he does have a life other than us. I actually got another employment request from someone today. So, mate, we're bloody...
You're in demand.
Mate, and for those talking to... And apologies for the focus on my camera in 5-inch. I've been on YouTube all morning, vaping the shit out of the joint out of frustration, but I've figured it out. And it will not happen again. I learned a lot about fucking Sony cameras today. Who would have thought just smartphone connection being on would be the problem?
I can't believe that. You changed about 400 settings today, and you finally figured out what fixes the focus.
We're all good. We're sorted.
I think your camera tweaking is actually going to be the catalyst that gets us to 4,000 subscribers.
Speaking of 4K cameras, we need to get to 4K subscribers. Money Miners.
We're close.
We're bloody close.
Listener are the difference.
Not the Money Miners, because the Money Miners are all subscribed, but anyone that isn't a Money Miner and that wishes to sort of casually become one, click that subscribe on YouTube.
Well, I think I read that 55% of the people who watch our videos are not subscribed. So
there you go.
Bloody click the button, you doofus.
And we have all legitimate subscribers and legitimate views within the first 24 hours.
We do, unlike some people in the space.
Exactly.
So, Matty, what's on the menu, mate?
What is on the menu? We've got a few capital raisins to go through, and you boys would go a bit on the 29 Metals upcoming impairment for their Capricorn Copper operations. Yep. And you boys are speak about things I never thought I'd talk about, a phosphate deep dive.
Yeah, I think we just scratched the surface in actual fact, but we'll give it a go. Lithium gets a shout.
Centrex.
And one that is ding, ding, ding. We own a couple. WA1, they had a couple results out from their Lunny discovery up in the West Arunta.
Yeah, very good.
We'll have a little chat about them. Why don't we get into it?
Let's get into it. We'd like to thank our great partners at Topdrill for sponsoring this episode and all the look, what a bloody event we went to at Diggers. A great event hosted for them, their Sundowner. Congratulations, we've said numerous times to the Toppies for raising a lot of cash for charity. So what a bloody good looking shed it was too.
Schmick.
Bloody, and didn't mind the free piss either. So,
mate, you do ads in a different way to anyone I've ever seen before.
Thanks, Timmy and Angela. Top drill.
Thanks, guys.
Drilling into the future, they reckon.
Alrighty.
Righto, let's rip it.
Capital raises, hey?
Azure, AZS, and over Lithium. They're tapping the market, and not for a small amount either.
No.
$120 million. And then another $10 million share purchase plan. I think it was $100 million was within their raising their capacity, and then the tranche 2, $20 million was shareholder approval. So $2.40 they're raising at, 12.4% discount to the last closing price. 5.3% discount to the 5-day VWAP. They did have that run up to $2.90 the other week, where there was the media speculation that SQM were going to come in and lob a bid for them.
Yeah, they were very hot at Diggers, weren't they?
They were
attracting a lot of attention. So,
but I suppose looking at those discounts, even though there was that rise, but you're looking at those discounts to last week's trading, they're obviously getting a lot more support than a lot of other companies from the equity markets. So she's looking like a pretty good pretty good project on the go.
Yeah, and it lays out the strategy for them, right? Bumping that deal at $2.30 from SQM last week.
Yep.
And now they want capital on board, and then just going to crack on with a lot of drilling, I'd imagine, to really size up what they've got at Andover.
So you got Barrenjoey joint lead managers with Canaccord, and then as you said, Trav, Barrenjoeys are their takeover defenders.
Defense advisors, yeah. So when you're subject to a takeover offer, sometimes in preparation you'll appoint a defense advisor. In this case, we read in the announcement that came last week that Barrenjoey were appointed defense advisor to Azure. So if there's any corporate transaction there on the M&A front, then Barrenjoey clip a ticket on the way there. The capital raise, in my mind, in some ways, is also a bit of a defence strategy too.
Yeah, right. Why is that?
It just gives you like if a company's trying to acquire you, you want the project. You don't want the cash that they have, right? So you have to sort of pay more, and it's a premium on top of cash as opposed to a project. Yeah. So, and it just makes you a bit more bulletproof to defend stuff. Yeah, oftentimes a large capital raise works as a defense strategy. Also depends on the dilution outcomes of any of the shareholders as well. In this case, you actually see SQM maintain their shareholding, so it doesn't actually at the margin dilute them in any way, shape or form.
And on the big shareholders, Creasy, they've said they'll go in for their pro rata, so that is for their share ownership in Azure.
Yep.
But remember, their 40% ownership of the project,
which is going up by the day. That 40%'s worth.
That is not something that they have to fund, right? That's
and SQM pro-ratering their shareholding too to maintain their 20%.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to hear from the money miners, and you two might be able to provide some colour. I wonder how much, if you think of what Creasy's going to make out of this project, how it rates in what he's made out of previous projects. I wonder what some of the big wins that he has had over his career.
But I think it's sort of, the financial outcomes are kind of skewed now that he has a lot of capital. He can take bigger positions, and the wins in a dollar value get bigger and bigger and bigger.
You could evaluate the free carried interest like for like with Sirius potentially, and just have a look at that. I actually think
did he discover he had that ground initially? Did he, Sirius?
Yeah, that was
which is Nova.
Exactly. Yeah, that was Creasy.
That'd have to be pretty bloody big.
That's why Creasy has ended up with a good chunk of IGO stock, and I think he's made a lot of money just riding IGO as well.
Yeah, chuck it on the to-do list. Righto, next up, Rox, you and me, RXL, refractory gold. Now, I actually had a great yarn with, we've touted him Refractory Rob Ryan, had a yarn with him at Diggers. Absolute bloody ripper of a bloke, talking all things refractory. And, I didn't know that, I think I mentioned it before, that Fosterville has like a BIOX part to the processing flow sheet where they get rid of all the preg robbing material and the refractory material. So yeah, it was a very enlightening conversation about the whole BIOX side of things and how that the bugs, you'd say, can be used to get rid of your shales and things that are preg robbing in flow sheets. So it's that's why he's called Refractory Rob. He knows shitloads about refractory.
Yeah, I nicknamed him Refractory Rob.
Has that been the first use of this nickname?
It might be. I don't know if anyone else calls him that, but I do.
It is now.
Because I think he had a good stint at, I want to say Paddington, which is there's refractory ore there. Is that correct?
Yeah, but he was at Bardock prior to this.
It was Paddington to Bardock. Now Bardock's of course got Aphrodite, which is refractory, and now Rox. So he goes for the refractory.
Follows the arsenic.
Someone's got to do the hard work, mate.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely. And I'll tell you what, if we want to do a refractory episode, he is the man because he was a great convo I had with him. So what are they? We don't know what they're tapping the market for.
No, it's just trading hard. They're raising money. They did a deal about 5 months ago between Rox and Venus Metals just to consolidate a JV under Rox, and there's been a bit more buzz about that company since then, and obviously the change in management with Rob Ryan there too now. So we'll see where it all leads.
I'm looking at my camera and just seeing that little square following my eyes, and I know I'm focused. I am at that much ease that this is sorted. We'll talk about a win. Right, Centrex boys.
Oh, mate, we're going to do a deep dive in a moment, but we'll give you the high level. They're raising money today. They've got the Ardmore Phosphate mine, and this one was put on our agenda via a money miner within the Hootaroo group chat, which if you're not in there, get in there. It's great. And this money miner pointed out to me, because he knows my love for industrial minerals, he said, Trav, check out Centrex. It's the only industrial minerals company on the ASX that is actually making money. And so I put them on my watch list, and what I get alerted for today, they're raising money. So I don't know if they are making money.
They are making money. It's just via shareholders, technically.
So they're raising $5 million today, $4 million plus a $1 million SPP at 9 cents, which is a fair way lower than the 20 cent peak they had 5 months ago. JD and I will do a bit of a deep dive into them after a couple more
that deep
stories.
dive. I'll look forward to it. But right, 29 Metals boys. They've had a bit of an insurance claim update and likely upcoming impairment they're putting towards their Capricorn Copper projects. Run us through it. It's been, I'll tell you what, talk about a bloody misfortune from a shitload of rain.
Yeah, there's a couple of things baked into this one-page update from 29 Metals today. The first one is that they've flagged a non-cash impairment of between $180 million and $210 million for their Capricorn Copper project in Queensland there, which is still suffering from that enormous rainfall event.
We've seen a couple of them lately, haven't we?
Yeah. And for context, the book value as at 31 December was $373 million, so implying the carrying value now will be about $200 million.
Was that just for Capricorn Copper or for 29 Metals total?
Yeah.
And then how does that non-cash impairment get treated? So how does that work?
That's the book value. That's when you see a balance sheet and you see the value of the assets on the balance sheet. Some of those assets relate to mineral properties. This is the carrying value of Capricorn Copper as it relates to the net assets of the company.
So how does it affect the company and the share price that they've putting that impairment on the books now?
The value of the asset on the balance sheet is different to the market value of the asset. So I'm sure the market already had a decent sense of what they think the asset is worth, and that's unrelated to the accounting value that you see on the book, and that's what's been written down.
Nonetheless, I think the share price is off a little.
Benefits in this, or
there's a whole bunch. The weight, depreciation, all that sort of stuff can flow through in various ways, but the piece of information that is new that really matters today is just this is an indication to shareholders in the market of what the company thinks the damage is. And so to the extent that there's a little bit of management guidance out in relation to how the company thinks of the value of the asset, that's sort of captured in this circa $200 million write-down.
And now the insurance payment.
Yeah, and you read this announcement and it sort of reads a little bit like there's a dispute with the insurers potentially in relation to the extent of coverage of the insurance policy that they have. Of course, 29 Metals is seeking an insurance payout in relation to the rainfall event and the damage it's caused up there. The insurers they've made an initial payment of $24 million for surface and associated business interruption. There's a claim process for the balance that's still within that category that's ongoing. And then there's a point in relation to underground loss and damage. The insurers have taken the position that the policy does not respond. So that's an interesting point to me. And my question to you, Matty, with a bit of knowledge of how
I'd like to get involved.
Yeah.
Cheers, boys.
Like, where do you think the majority of the claim would sit? Do you think the large amount of value is actually in relation to the surface infrastructure and disruption to activities, or is it in relation to the underground? Where's the majority of the damage as you would interpret it?
It would depend on how much rehab they've got to do down there. So obviously the water's corroded a lot of the ground support, so it will have to be replaced, and electrical boxes and fans that were flooded would have to be replaced. So there's the cost of that. So depending on how much of that there is, would you weigh it up against the cost of the surface. Then there's the production issues that will arise from the caved dirt, the broken dirt, like oxidising, cooking due to the water and the presence of the sulfides there. So there's that production, the production impact of it. But if you're on the side, now I'm hypothesising here, I don't know if this is the case, but if you're an insurer and they have a sub-level cave mine, they have no way of protecting that underground mine from water ingress. They've not 29 Metals because they didn't start the mine, but they've bought the mine and the chosen mining method is sub-level cave. So I don't know if they're saying, well, you have a sub-level cave, you've got no way of stopping that water going in. That is your problem. I'm not sure, but that was sort of the first thing that come to mind is why they mightn't be applying this to the underground, because they've got no way of keeping the water out. You can't put a big fucking apron over the top of the bloody, or you could, it'd be a big bloody apron over the top of the sinkhole at the surface. So
it looked like there was a fair bit of water in those photos.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the reason. If anyone's got a bit extra colour on that, let us know.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings us to the interesting question, which we've been alluding to for quite a few months now, and that's the capital raise. And the AFR wrote about this last week, like we flagged at the time. And then, it's something you don't see every day. The AFR pulled the article offline. So the figures, if I'm thinking correctly, guys, was 100 million and 40 cents, 100 million US.
That's what the AFR, there was speculation from the AFR that 29 Metals were raising US 100 million at 40 cents per share, but that was squashed pretty much within 2 hours of it being posted.
They're about 68 cents today, aren't they?
I think they come off a little bit.
Yeah. The US dollar pricing is interesting. I mean, 29 Metals, they do have their debt facility in US dollars, and I think to the extent that they'll might have a balance sheet stress, it'll be in relation to servicing their debt and what the demands of the lenders are, in my mind. I mean, you look at their balance sheet now, they've got 127 million Aussie in cash and cash equivalents. This is at 30 June. They also, in the last quarter, fully drew down a US $40 million working capital debt facility, which took them all the way up to US $166 million in drawn debt.
It reminds me of when we spoke about St. Barbara. What we can't completely see here are what sort of covenants that they have internally around some of the debt. And maybe, I think you mentioned earlier today, Trav, that some of these commercial banks that are lending the capital could be pressing 29 Metals to say, you are getting close or you're breaching some of the covenants, you need to, raise a bit of capital, have a bit more cash on the books.
In 29 Metals' case, they have disclosed that they've got letters of support from their lenders to, in this period of sort of.
But they'd also waived some.
Yeah, there's I think a waiver in relation to some of the obligations, but so it looks like that their lenders are supportive for some pretty tricky times. But if you are a lender, the most important thing is that you get repaid, and if that requires an injection of new equity, then you'll be encouraging a company to do so with the powers that you have. So we still think that 29 Metals is going to need to repair their balance sheet via equity.
I think they were anticipating to get a lot more than $24 million from the insurance claim. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
And keep in mind, they still need to make a $26 million stamp duty payment as well, which they flagged in their last quarterly for Golden Grove.
Another thing that comes to mind with the insurance side with underground, if they're looking to claim insurance against equipment and capital infrastructure, I would think the insurer would say, why didn't you pull it out earlier? Or if it started raining and there was predicted, why didn't you get it out?
Yeah.
Like, remove that infrastructure instead of leaving it in there and hoping the best. Talking out my arse a bit there, but that could be another.
I'm sure the insurers would want to fight having to pay.
Oh, yeah, they'll be coming up with if they said, oh, you left it down there for 3 days, you could have pulled all the machinery out and the boxes and the fans.
Yeah, so
why didn't you?
we spoke about 29 metals a few weeks back during quarterly season in the context of speaking about Galena, Panoramic, Poseidon nickel, and we've unfortunately been proven correct in a few of those cases where it's just hard work, and we saw the capital raise that Panoramic had to go and do. So let's sort of hope these guys can.
Unless you're Azure, piece of piss.
Yeah, we weren't speaking about them in the same context as
100 million bucks, just fucking big T's just said right, Angie boys.
Yeah, and just before we move on, the 24 million, Matty, was just the initial payment. There's still more to come. We don't know what the remaining quantum of the insurance payout will be.
So that's not all that's going to come for the surface stuff?
There's more to come for surface with claims.
More to come for surface.
Ongoing. So it's not the end of the insurance payout.
Yeah, so we don't know what component is attributed to the underground.
Alrighty. WA1.
JD, dig. How they going? You up a bit on WA1?
I mean,
early.
They've been trading in and around this level for quite a few months now, and I think a couple of us have to disclose a bit of a holding here.
Are you on that too, Trav?
Yep.
Good work, mate.
Yep.
So they came out with 15 more holes today from their Lunny discovery up in the West Arunta, as we touched on.
Is it Looney or Lunny?
I think Looney.
I thought it was Looney.
Yeah, I think it's Looney.
You're off your head, JD. Maybe that's how
Looney
they pronounce it in Melbourne.
Yeah.
You've been there all week.
Mate, just look at the spelling. It's got Lunny all over it.
I could be wrong.
So they're talking about that shallow blanket of mineralisation that extends 1.5 kilometres now. And another interesting point from the announcement today was that the maiden resource estimate has been delayed. So it was going to come out in the fourth quarter of this calendar year, and now it's expecting to see that drop in half one of 2024. So yeah, the one thing we always touch on with WA1, the whole thing just hinges on metallurgy. So yeah, needless to say, they repeat that again, and that's what we're really looking for. And the company's also flagged that they've started doing some more work to see how the met sort of shapes up. So all up, 15 kilometres have been drilled now. They're going to crack on with some more infill drilling. They've been doing it on a sort of 200 by 200 metre spacing grid, and they mentioned expanding that on a 100 by 100 metre grid now.
So JD, what was Manny Datt's opinion on the Met? Did he have any sort of insight into it?
Yeah, he did.
When
his response, I remember listening to it clearly. His response was he said the best kind of optimism in relation to the Met, while it's still uncertain, is the high grade gives you a degree of confidence that you can have lower recovery and still have an economic deposit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Manny Datt, true friend of the show. Right, Leo, Lithium boys.
Mate.
Coming on, following on from our great little 5-inch chat.
Very timely, I think.
The other day.
Yeah, this is a shout out to Paddy who called this one correctly. He predicted, because it was sort of penned, that Leo Lithium were set to have an announcement today and hopefully come out of suspension. Paddy said he reckons that they'll probably just extend the voluntary suspension, which they have done. But I read the wording very curiously, Maddie, and they've only extended their suspension for another 2 days. And they say that they anticipate an announcement before Wednesday, the 23rd of August, which is in 2 days' time. Let's wait and see, mate. I'm hopeful that shareholders will have a bit more clarity on what the discussions have been between Leo and the government of Mali. So let's hope that one can be quoted on the stock exchange again soon and trading for everyone to have a degree of liquidity and certainty.
More news to come this week for the money miners. Righto, boys. Let's get into Phosphate. Centrex deep dive. And Centrex would be so flattered that they're getting a deep dive on Money of Mine, I reckon. But hey, we're all about diversification here.
Yeah, well, you know how obsessed I am with industrial minerals, mate. It was going to happen sooner or later.
Oh,
we love them that much, but JD's done more work than me on this one, so
Not sure I have. We'll give it a bit of context because that's what I needed to get up to speed with this company. So they're a fairly small business, capped at 60 million going into the raise today, and they had at 30th June 7.3 million in cash. So they've got the Ardmore Phosphate Rock project in northwest Queensland, and they claim to be the first Aussie company that's exported beneficiated phosphate rock. So phosphate, the phosphate price has done really well over the past 2 or so years. It got a real uptick given that a lot of it
comes out of Russia, right? So
Ukraine. So
the crisis there sent those the prices of phosphate through the roof. I think also you had the bloody potash went through the roof around that same period of time as well, because a lot of that comes out of Ukraine, and they've stayed elevated, the prices. And these are phosphate and potash are kind of these key elements that go into fertilizers.
Yeah, well, the only time I've ever talked about phosphate was shout out to Gordon Atkinson. He was an engineer over east that I knew, and he did mining engineering work at Nauru.
Oh, mate, that's going to be a fun fact to come later. You got to save that one.
That's when
that will get a mention. So over 90% of phosphate rock goes to fertilizer and animal feed supplements, like we sort of touched on there. So more on Centrex specifically, they wanted to export 440,000 tonnes of phosphate rock. So that's a decent size, amount of product to get out. And given that they're near Mount Isa, what they do is they truck it to Mount Isa and then they chuck it on the train to the port of Townsville. And what the raising centres around is what they call stage 1.5. So they want to get up to 625,000 tonnes of product. So a couple rounding out details on how the company works. They do long-term offtake contracts. We touched on the price being quite elevated, but you don't know exactly what they're getting. They speak about a beneficiated process or beneficiation process. Yeah. So they said they got an average
bloody thing, isn't it? That's all it means.
Yeah, and there's different sort of pricing levels. So they said that they got an average of 402 Aussie dollars per tonne over FY23, which was their first year of production, not a full year, and they produced 73,000 tonnes.
So it's a small mine, right? Like we've seen photos of it. It looks pretty small, and there's a degree of trucking before it goes on a train. So you can imagine that the cost profile of this operation, it's not a Q1 cost producer. It's going to be the high cost producer.
I kind of think of them like a high cost iron ore mine. It is a sort of bulk moving type of operation, and there are some really massive players in this market. You've got Nutrien, they're capped at over 40 billion. Mosaic capped at 20 odd billion. ICL or Israel Chemicals capped at over 12 billion. And then you've got these huge groups that aren't even public. So a lot of this stuff comes from Morocco, and that's one of the the index pricing is done it. It's Moroccan phosphate rock. And their private business there, and the OCP group are just huge players in this market. Most of the farms in Australia get their supply from Morocco.
It is interesting. You mentioned those companies in the billions there, mate, the deca billions.
Yeah. Mention the ones on the other end of the spectrum now, Trav.
Yeah, and it poses the question, because none of those companies are listed on the ASX. So for the Australian domiciled punter, what are their options to get phosphate mining exposure? And it's pretty slim pickings out there. There is, of course, Centrex, which we are talking about right now. There's a company called Minbos. They have an $87 million market cap developing the Kataka phosphate mine in Angola. So a bit of Africa risk thrown into it as well.
Kakata?
Yeah, Kakata.
Oh, there you
yeah. And they plan to produce granules for nutrient feedstock near the mine via their own fertilizer plant as well.
Didn't they have the plan as well just to distribute it all in country or in the region as well?
You're potentially right there, JD. And then there's a couple of Australian projects in there as well that are putting forward a bit of a DSO plan to market. The first being Rare X. They've got a $25 million market cap. The main thing people would know them for is their Cummins Range rare earth project, but they claim there's a DSO phosphate ore body sitting on top of their rare earths ore body there with a bit of an early cash flow plan they have. And then Avenira, $25 million market cap, another DSO pitch. This one's based in the Northern Territory though. and the project is the Winara Phosphate project. So, if you just compare the market caps there to the ones that you mentioned, they are in a different league altogether.
So a bit of scope on where the company's trying to go. Like we just touched on, they produce 73,000 tonnes. They're aiming for this coming calendar year to do 440,000 tonnes. What they're trying to fund here is stage 1.5, which will get them to 625,000 tonnes per annum. And then onward, they're trying to get to stage 2, which is 800,000 tonnes per annum. So what the funding for that they're raising now is going to go toward a new tailing storage, a new camp facility, brine ponds and drying pads. And they talk about an operating cost of Aussie 160 to 180. So given that that is higher than where the phosphate price was just a few years back, it does really indicate what you said, Trav, that they're a high cost producer. And lastly, on the raising there, they haven't, going back a while, they've spoken about this funding that they need to get it in to get this stage 1.5 done, but they don't really flag what the whole thing is going to cost. So I'm not convinced that what they're raising today, plus the cash that they have on hand already, is going to be enough for them to get this thing all up and running, but maybe we'll be proven wrong when they come out with a bit more colour on what they've got planned for the future.
Yeah, let's see, mate, and hopefully they can make some money from their operations and funnel that into some of their growth plans as well. I've got a fun fact.
So Trav, I do apologise for all the times I ruin your fun facts in advance because I don't read the notes.
It's because you can read my mind, mate. We're on the same wavelength.
I think it's because I just don't read the fucking show notes or anything and just go rogue. I do apologise. I hope we can still get along.
That's okay, mate. It's that good a fun fact. I'm sure the listeners probably already know it as well. But are you guys ready for the fun fact? Right?
Oh, here we go.
All right. So I noticed one of Centrex's most recent announcements was an agreement to commence exploration on Barnaba Island, one of those Pacific islands. It's only 300 kilometres from Nauru, which you mentioned there, Matty. Barnaba was subject to phosphate mining back in the day, just like Nauru was too. You guys know I'm very curious, like if you guys know the source of the phosphate that was actually on Nauru, where did that phosphate come from?
Bird shit.
It did indeed.
That's a lot of gastro to bloody pump out a whole bloody deposit, isn't it?
It was millions of years of seagull shit.
It's not the only island in the middle of nowhere that has that.
No, there's heaps of, there's quite a few of those Pacific islands are great phosphate sources because of the seagull shit.
And they must have shut in the same spot because I remember Gordo used to tell me they mined them they were called pinnacles or pillars. It's like I think that these phosphate pinnacles were like pods of it, so they obviously just shut in the same spot.
Wow. Maybe it all sank into
given the whole island is like a K and a bit by a K and a bit, and there's no other islands for quite a while.
Yeah,
I think
courteous of them, they didn't chuck it in the ocean. Like that was their place to shit.
It's fascinating. Well, I guess they got to sit down. It's got to be comfortable, mate.
Yeah. It's like you got to get on. You got to check all the stock announcements and everything. Take your phone in and have a vape for 20 minutes.
And mate, Nauru, they got this phenomenal history in this respect. Like in 1975, right? Nauru had the second highest GDP per capita in the world. It was number 2, only to Saudi Arabia.
What's the population?
It would have been tiny, but the per capita bit is, the number of people on the island is a big driver there. But it just goes to show how lucrative the phosphate mining there was. The grade was amazing, all that sort of stuff. And there were royalties from the phosphate mining that were accrued by the government and famously torched as well by a bit of mismanagement of capital. Spectacularly poor investments that they made included, would you believe it or not, investing in a West End musical that completely flopped, and it was about a love affair between Leonardo da Vinci and Mona Lisa.
Oh, geez, that actually sounds all right.
Yeah, well, you've never heard of it because it was no good, but
there's still opportunity.
Nauru felt like it was a good investment.
So when was the detention centre and all that? Was that
popped up early 2000s, mid 2000s, and that's the big economic driver of Nauru, the people of Nauru today.
Is that and still there?
Yeah, it's still there. It's had periods where it's closed in between different governments, but the centre's still there. It's had years of being operational and not operational.
Very bloody interesting, Trav.
Yeah, mate.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Jeez, it's good to have JD back, hey?
Oh, mate.
It's sensational.
Rounds it out, doesn't he?
Because, to be honest, the whole transferring of files and everything's a pain in the arse over here. So it's just good to have you here, just for editing convenience, JD.
Pleasure to be here with you, mate.
I love it. Right, boys. What? That's it, eh?
Yeah, mate.
That's it.
I think the only
That's
That's where we stop talking.
That's just it.
yeah, we got some
Sponsors to thank.
some partners to thank, and yeah, jump in the bloody Hootaroo group chat if you aren't there already.
Thanks to Terra, Anytime Exploration Services, Topdrill,
JP Search.
And K-Drill.
Hey Drew. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
If you were going to, do you have a favourite out of any of the 5 boys?
No, we're not allowed to do that.
Who pays the most? They're the favourite.
They're all the same.
No, we love you
Hootaroo.
all. I do love Ron Sullivan a lot.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.